Hey y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, Churchill Downs has an all-stakes pick 4 this weekend, and they're all stakes for 3-year-olds. And this is the last weekend for 3-year-olds only races, and there's some pretty good fields. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so this is the Churchill Downs all-stakes pick 4, and it comprises races 7 through 10, and it's on Saturday at the Twin Spires. So leg 1 is race 7. It's the Bourbon Trail Stakes. It's an ungraded $300,000 stakes at a mile and 3/16 for 3-year-olds. And it's a small field, as you can see, so we're going to keep our usage at the minimum. And just looking at the field, just go over some of them real quick. Charles B is coming from the UAE and has not run a race commensurate with a mile and 3/16 or close to it. A mile is the best that he's done. And his pedigree really doesn't scream 2 turns being by B Jersey. So I think he'll likely be a pace presence, but I can't really see him doing more than that. Monsiata de Oro, I think it's just too early for this horse. It's trained by Brad Cox and looks to have a little bit of talent, but the progression hasn't been such that I would think is ready to move up and be a real solid competitor here. Hasn't really beat a whole lot. Slip Mahoney, I'm going to give a pass in the St. Louis Derby, basically because of the mud. And if we remember back to the Gotham, he didn't run, ran okay, but not great. And I think this horse is certainly better than that. And I think that he'll run a solid race, being by Brad Cox. I think that's logical to expect. Oster Eclipse has some upside. This horse won his last race and won driving, drew away from a field. Wasn't much he beat, but you did definitely see some talent there, and he is on the improve. So I think he's one that we have to keep in the mix. Lincoln Highway is moving to dirt, and that just doesn't make it for me. I don't see enough to tell me that the speed figures are usually higher on turf, and his turf figures aren't commensurate with probably what would win this, so I'm going to pass. Big Data, his last, the Super Derby at Louisiana Downs, he had the perfect trip. He basically was on the rail all the way, uncontested, and he just kind of, got up at the wire, but I don't know. I just wasn't that impressed. He's kind of a grinder, and I think there's others that appeal more. Dennington, I am really reticent to get excited about a closer, but he is better than his last race, I think, indicates. It was a small field, and he was up nearer the pace, which I think is kind of a good sign because it shows maybe he's getting it a little bit better because he was a deep closer from the clouds early in his career. But if you look back at his prior races, I mean, I think he fits here very well. I don't know that he's going to have a pace to run to necessarily, but I also think he might be a little closer than usual. So Dennington, while I don't think it's an ideal situation, the mile and 3/16 should definitely help his cause, and I think he's one that you have to include. Okay, so leg 2 of the All-Stakes Pick 4 is the 8th race, and it's the Harrods Creek Stakes. It's ungraded for $300,000, and it's run at 7 furlongs for 3-year-olds only. And just looking at the field, this is a fairly contentious one, I think. Bouncer is I can kind of go either way with Bouncer. He showed a lot of grit holding off Frosted Departure at 7 furlongs in his last race. But I just kind of think there's others a little better in here that'll probably get the jump on him. And he'd have to wire this field, and I think that's kind of a tall order. There's a couple others that we'll get to in a second. Mount Up is trained by Todd Pletcher, and this one has the absolute perfect progression, class level rising with race level. He's been beating older horses, and I think this one really makes a lot of sense. And he looks probably would be my pick, followed only by Ever So Mischievous, another one who is really impressed me his last race at Saratoga. And again, another one that's progressing and moving forward. And of course, that's always what you want to see. But particularly with 3-year-olds, even later in the year, And when you see them beating older horses and you see them continuing to progress, then you know you're onto something. So those two look awful good to me. And then finally, we're going to throw in Loyal Company. He's a closer. I don't know that he's going to have pace to run to here, but at 7 furlongs, closers always have a chance. And this one's coming into the race in pretty good form. And I think under is probably more likely, but this one looks like he's coming in good form, so we'll throw him in the mix. Just to mention a couple of the more notable ones I'm sure that you're familiar with. Determinedly, I really liked this horse earlier. He was really honest. He gives his best every time. The problem is he just isn't progressing from earlier in the year. He's kind of stuck, and the others are moving forward, so I find it highly unlikely that he would be a contender here. Bourbon Bash, you know, the thing with him is, first of all, he runs too much, and that's often the plaint of Wayne Lucas horses. But this one ran a really nice race at Saratoga last time, but he only got third. And it seems to be an MO for this one. He makes a move at the top of the stretch, and then he just flattens out. He just can't sustain it. So he has a really limited window where he's effective. So in this race in particular, where I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of pace to run to, and horses that I like better that are progressing, whereas I'm not certain that Bourbon Bash is, so we're going to go with them instead. Third leg of the All-Stakes Pick 4 is the 9th race, and it's the Seneca Overnight Stakes for 65K, ungraded. It's run at 1 1/16 for 3-year-old fillies. If we look at the contestants from the E column, I like Poblano. This one is progressing steadily for a hot barn. Brendan Walsh has just been hot for a while, and he just seems to stay that way. He's gone through 3 straight meets, and he's continued his winning ways, so I think that's an awful good sign. And for one that's progressing nicely, this would be a big step up for sure, but it looks capable of it. The big thing I like about him more than anything is the other pace in the race. She's Looking Lucky. Is coming off a layoff, and basically looking at her form, that the last time she came off a layoff, she was awful keen out of the gate and then faded right back. And that'll happen a lot of times, particularly with horses that are running on the front end. They're going to that means they're rock fit, but little eager. And so I'm thinking that maybe that'll be the same case here. This one will be a little keen early and will probably drop back, and that'll leave things for Poblano. And if she's good enough, she certainly has a chance. Taxed and Zigera are the next two logicals. And Taxed, we know, we've seen, maybe graded stakes in some cases was a little too much for her. The Black Eyed Susan was kind of a soft field, so it wasn't a surprise that she took it down. But this is a softer spot, and I think she's good enough to win this race, and one you certainly have to use. Zigera proved in the Alcibiades last year, at 2 years old, that she can run on dirt and be effective. And I think she's coming into this race fresh and ready to roll, and I think you might get a decent price on her. Kind of the wild card is Fun and Feisty. This one at 2 years old was pretty good, but the form dropped off markedly the last couple of races, and she's been freshened up, been away for a while, and I think Kenny McPeak is showing an awful lot of confidence putting this one right into a stakes race off a layoff. Definitely going to have to improve, but the work tab looks pretty solid, and if she's grown and to the point of progressing, then I think that she might be a wild card in here, and you're probably going to get a decent price, and we'll just have to see. The fourth and final leg of the All-Stakes Pick 4 is the 10th race, and it's the Dogwood Stakes. It's a Grade 3, run at 7 furlongs for 3-year-old fillies. And I'll just make a note that I recorded the previous 3 races earlier in the day when the odds weren't apparent, weren't provided. So I apologize for that, but this one, obviously, we have the odds here. This is a kind of a head-scratcher race. I think it's very wide open. It's definitely a spread race. There's nobody who really has a decisive edge, in my opinion. So I think value is what you want to find. The lone standout, I would say, is Yesternight. I think this one is showing the kind of progression we always like to see, getting better, class levels improving as well as with the race level. So if you had to pin one that maybe has a bit of an edge over some of the others, I would say Yesternight. BG Warrior on the front end, I think, ran a really nice race on turf last time. And granted, it was on turf, but this one has displayed decent turf dirt form prior. And I think it shows that this one maybe has turned the corner and is moving forward. So could very well get on the front end and would be awful tough to stop. But again, it is a pretty even field. It probably isn't that likely, but it is possible in this field. Twice as Sweet is trained by Brendan Walsh, and again, he's just red hot. And this one is a pretty good fit in here. Really what's swaying me towards her is Brendan Walsh more than anything else. Got Declan Cannon aboard too, and that's also a good fit here. He's had 3 starts with this one, probably has figured it out. It looks like this one's in pretty good form, so Twice as Sweet I think is a pretty good fit. And you get 6-1, which is a decent price. Metaphysical, in watching the last race, really had at Charlestown, the Charlestown Oaks. First of all, it's a funky track to begin with. It's a 2-turn race at 7 furlongs, so we always have to remember that. And Metaphysical has been running routes generally, but in that race, it was got in really tight and had to check hard on the backstretch, and yet kept on. And I thought that said a lot about this one's form, particularly since she closed well from mid-pack to get up for a decent third. And so I think this one is probably coming into the race in pretty good form. And this is the kind of class level I think this one is probably very comfortable at and can compete with. So Metaphysical at 10-1, I think you're getting very good value. And then finally, we'll throw Alexa Lou in there. We tried to get one from each food group, if you will, on this race because I think you need it. Alexa Lou, I'm not sure, is class level, at the class level of these others, but did come off the layoff and close very well in a 6.5 furlong race, allowance race, and got a nice figure for it. And that may coming in with one race under her belt and moving forward. It is a class test, but I think especially in a 7 furlong race, late runners do have a little bit of advantage. It's awful hard to hold a lead that long. So we'll throw Alexa Lou in there to cover all our bases. So here's what our ticket will look like for the All Stakes Pick 4 at Churchill Downs on Saturday. In leg 1, race 7, we're going to use 2, 3, and 5. In leg 2, we're going to use 5 and 6. In leg 3, race 9, we're going to use 1, 4, and 7. And in leg 4, race 10, which I think is a spread race, we're going to use 1, 2, 4, 7, and 9. So that's 3 times 2 is 6, times 3 is 18, times 5 is 90. So at a 50-cent base, that's a $45 ticket or $90 at a $1 ticket. So that's the last of the 3-year-old races for the year. And I think it's a pretty interesting sequence. There's a lot of races where it's really hard to separate the contenders from each other. And so it's pretty contentious. There should be some value there, and hopefully we can take it down. If you do like content like this, please like and subscribe because it does help to keep us going. And again, we always want to thank those of you who have come on board and given your support. We really appreciate it. Can't say that enough, and really want to thank you for it. And the community continues to grow, and really happy about that. So thanks again for all of you who have come on board. We will continue with our postings for the Breeders' Cup. We'll have some more postings for the divisions tomorrow. And so be on the lookout for that. And I think there might be another sequence this weekend, and so perhaps we'll have another posting for that. So plenty of content to look forward to. That's it for today. Thanks for coming by. I'll talk to you soon, and until then, be well.